Good morning. Welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Director of Social Media for HAR, and I'm joined by a familiar face to the HAR family, Edward Moncur, our Director of IT and Security. Welcome, Edward.
Good morning, Christina, and thanks for having me here again on Member Focus Monday. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you. Every time you come on, you give us some great advice, ways to keep ourselves safe online, our family safe online, and of course, clients safe online as well. So we're excited to hear updates from you this morning. For anyone who hasn't heard from you before, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about your day-to-day, who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, I'm the Director of IT and Security at HAR. In my role, I lead a team with the responsibility of managing, securing, and maintaining HAR's technology assets. Whether these exist on premises or in the cloud, internal or member-facing, we ensure that our staff and 46,000 members are always able to access applications and services to facilitate their business and maintain their membership in good standing.
Wonderful. And I mean, you took on a very big undertaking about a year and a half ago, when, all of a sudden there's a stay-home order put in place. There wasn't much you had to do because you were really already prepared for it. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that transition happened?
One of the benefits of working for HAR is that it's a very technology forward organization. And so we had done a lot of legwork in the previous years with technology and cloud-based platforms and collaboration platforms with the support of our CEO and all of our leadership. And so when there was this order to have everyone work from home, it did put a little stress on the team, but that was just part of what we do in the IT field, and we were able to turn around in maybe just about a week and get everyone to be working from home.
Wonderful. And it was pretty simple, I might add. We basically just brought our phones home, plugged them in, and got to work. So that was wonderful. Thank you for that work. Let's talk a little bit about some of the issues that we find realtors encounter, and then anybody really kind of deals with this. We always hear about how important it is to have a complicated password, and beyond 123, right? Or password 123.
Or monkey.
Or monkey. That's one of the most common ones, right? But can you tell us why that's so important to have a complicated password?
Along with a unique username, a strong password is one of just the basic components necessary to prove your identity during authentication and prior to gaining access to any accounts and services. Complex and unique passwords offer the best protection against unauthorized account access. Conversely, weak, easily guessed, or compromised passwords represents a real risk to both personal and client data by making your accounts more susceptible to various attacks, including online impersonation, account hijacking, and business email compromise.
All right. Well, very good. So what's a way that we can better manage our passwords? I mean, I would imagine you're not going to say, write it down on a notepad and leave it on your kitchen counter. Is that probably not good?
Absolutely not. I think when you said that, my eye may have twitched. But seriously, I'm happy to say that it's never been easier to create and manage passwords, especially on mobile devices. For years, we here at HAR, but more specifically in the IT team, we've advocated for the use of password manager programs like LastPass. Along with others, LastPass requires you to remember just one long master password at setup. And once it's configured, the program will then handle generating and secure storage of all other passwords for the websites that you enable. After that's done, your subsequent visits to the saved website or app, the password manager will autofill the usernames and passwords for you. And there are some additional features that are particularly useful, but one that I find is potentially of great benefit to our realtor community or anyone working with support staff is the LastPass for Teams offering. And in instances where access ought to be granted to a social media specialist, an office assistant, or someone performing temporary administrative functions, you can give them access as part of your team without revealing the password for that site. Also, access can be withdrawn at any time without having to change the site password. So again, we're big advocates of password manager programs.
Okay, well, very good. Now, people have shared with you some data handling practices by Realtor members that are not ideal, and these might be mistakes that members might be making and don't realize they're making them. So, can you share with us some of the examples of data handling practices, misuse of data handling that you've seen from Realtors?
Absolutely. Too often, I think the cybersecurity discussions focus on highly publicized or costly cyber attacks. And what doesn't get enough attention is poor data handling practices, typically by authorized individuals, which can cause information to be unnecessarily placed at risk. So we have become aware of instances where potentially sensitive personal information is being routinely sent by realtors in the body of email messages and also as attachments. So I just want to remind everyone, because I think we take it for granted, that standard email is not secure, which means that a message can theoretically be intercepted, misrouted, and eventually read by someone other than the intended party. So further, that initial email message and any forwarded instances of that message and any replies can drastically increase the instances of where sensitive information may be repeatedly exposed. So what examples are we talking about? We're talking about client information as well as potential employee or contractors information. So there are W-9 forms, obviously with sensitive information on there, auto debit agreements and authorizations for monthly billing, credit card numbers, expiration dates, even completed rental and lease applications with current addresses, previous addresses, and employment information. So this highlights a lack of awareness, training, and perhaps adherence to policies which will ensure compliance with the data security best practices.
Okay, very good. And a lot of times I think we might make these mistakes or mishandle this data just because we're trying to do something quickly. I shared with you last week that I was registering my daughter for elementary school, and they were asking me to send all this personal data via email. And while that would have been faster, I ended up getting in the car and driving over because I was realizing I'm about to send all of this stuff through email. I don't know who could gain access to it. I don't know who's on the receiving end. Again, it might be quicker to do some things like that, but we have to take our time and think about the data that we're about to be sharing and if it could be compromised on the other end. So what are some things that realtors can do to protect their personal data? And then we'll also get into their client data because, again, they're also handling so much of that.
So I'm going to answer a question that actually will relate to both realtor and client data, right, or customer data. And the first thing is whenever it's possible, use secure encrypted email. And this is a feature that is typically already available, but we don't use it through Microsoft Outlook, through Gmail, and other providers. And if there's a secure file upload feature available on any transaction management system, be sure to use those as well. We've also covered the benefits of a password manager, but in addition to username and password, multi-factor authentication, sending you an SMS or email one-time numerical code, or a physical token is also advised as part of your authentication strategy. And I'd say, the single most, I think, thing that people do, particularly on social media, is oversharing. And the quizzes and challenges of, well, we know what those challenges and quizzes are, but they ask for personal information such as where you met your spouse, the street you grew up on, your first pet's name. All of these things are typically the security validation questions for your online account. So it's just a really bad idea to participate in those quizzes. I'd also say in video conference sessions, we've all, over the past year and a half, done many more video sessions than we thought. But take a look at your background and sanitize and make sure that there's nothing visible that would potentially be of value to someone that's trying to attack any of your online accounts. And then finally, I'd say your IoT devices like Wi-Fi enabled garage door openers, doorbell cameras, smart light bulbs, Just a couple of weeks ago, I got a home sprinkler system that connects to my Wi-Fi, and I can turn it on with my phone. All of those things are actually put on a guest network, so they can't talk to my laptop, my tablets, or any of my work-related technology devices.
Very good. And so, specifically with the client data, what are ways that realtors can better protect their client data?
There is so much to be done there that I don't think we have enough time. But the top ones that I can think of is, primarily if you're a principal or a manager or a leader in a firm, implement some sort of training for your staff as part of your overall risk management and mitigation practices, and make it a regular required occurrence. I can tell you that we've seen just within HAR a lot of errant clicks, or perhaps potentially malicious software not being clicked on by our staff just through training that we do quite regularly. So I'd also say for leaders, evaluate where data is being shared and exchanged, and establish a policy for managing that data. And third, I think regularly apply updates to your computers, because many of the intrusions that we see are traced back to outdated and unpatched systems with publicly disclosed vulnerabilities. And finally, advise clients on what to expect in a transaction. What type of communication should they expect from you, and warn them about the risks of real estate wire fraud.
Okay, very good. Andrea just brought up a good point that we were mainly talking about email here, but Andrea brought up text message. There are now scammers that are sending texts that look like they're real to get your information as well. So I would imagine the same practices apply to text as you would with email?
Yes, in email we typically refer to as phishing. On SMS or text messages, they call it smishing. There's so many different variations, but yes, regardless of the channel, you'll see that a lot of the tactics and techniques are the same. But
Okay.
yes, I would agree. Exercise the same degree of caution, regardless of where it's coming from.
Okay, very good. And I'd like to get into that a little deeper. So, because it seems like as soon as we figure out ways to protect ourselves, they come up with something else and a new way to attack us. So, what are the latest trends in phishing, and what are some things that we should be looking for?
So, phishing still factors quite highly. Of course, that is a communication from an attacker that is purporting to come from a trusted party or a trusted entity, and requesting information, usually your username and password. And what we're seeing is that due to the increased reliance on file sharing services like Dropbox, or even transaction management platforms, e-signature providers, many of the phishing attempts being crafted today are done so to appear as if you're communicating with one of these services. So be extra cautious when reviewing unsolicited email from what appears to be a trusted service or entity. Next, we have ransomware. Ransomware is a huge issue for organizations of all sizes. And of course, that's malicious software that runs on your computer and locks up the files, at which point the attacker is going to request a ransom in order to provide you with a key to release your files. We've witnessed over the past year and a half, particularly with hospitals, major meat suppliers, fuel pipeline operators, and other entities being successfully targeted by ransomware. And so a lot of times that shows up on the national news. We see that the price of gas went up in the case of the fuel pipeline operator. And we had limitations placed on meat that you could buy at the store due to the attack on the meat suppliers. So again, very significant risks, and something that we should all be aware of. And then finally, there's still a fair amount of real estate wire fraud, where an attacker monitors communication channels of parties to an ongoing real estate transaction, and somewhere near closing will intercept and intervene in that communication to redirect part or all of the client funds to an account controlled by the hacker. So this is not a comprehensive list, of course, but just some of the more prevalent attack types that we're seeing today.
Absolutely. And I'm not in the middle of a real estate transaction, and I even get those click here to view your files or your closing documents, and I get those about once a week. And luckily, because we get the training from you, I'm aware of it and I'm not in the middle of a transaction. But if I was in the middle of a transaction, that's something that you might click on if you weren't thinking about it. So when those cases come up, I mean, what is your recommendation there? Just take your time, look a little more thoroughly before clicking?
Yes, I think looking more thoroughly before you're clicking is definitely the first step. Our on the IT side and the tech side, we can put all of the safeguards in place, but all of those things can be defeated by an errant click or a keystroke or an inquisitive user. So users are the first line of defense. We count on you, and yes, just a few more minutes to scrutinize any communication that you're getting. If it doesn't quite feel right, or even if it feels too good to be true, it's something that you should slow down and when in doubt, ask your IT support team.
Okay, very good. So many people right now are working from home. Maybe they have their kids doing virtual school or online school. What tips do you have for realtors that are working at home, and also with potentially with children that are doing school virtually?
So I think the first recommendation I would make is to lock your computer while you step away, because kids don't know boundaries. They'll come over, they'll start typing on your computer. Maybe they'll put in a USB drive with their homework, and that can potentially cause problems. So don't allow them to use your work computer. Lock your computer when you do step away. I'd also say, one of the greatest challenges is just now that everyone's working at home, people are finding that they have these Wi-Fi dead spots where the signal falls off or they just can't get a signal. And so I'd proactively go and locate those Wi-Fi dead spots in your home, add more access points. They're typically, people refer to them as routers, but they're access points. You can add additional access points in your home to strengthen your signal. And I'd recommend, the mesh type network, the Eros, the Google Home Wi-Fi, some of the more modern Wi-Fi technologies.
Okay, great. Also, with children going back to school, parents may be investing in computers and tablets for their kids. Are there any special recommendations that you'd make to those parents who want to keep their kids safe online?
There are a ton of options out there. The first step that you can take is some sort of filtering, and that filtering has to occur on PCs. It has to occur on obviously mobile devices too, if your child is old enough to have a mobile device. So we have some well-known names in the antivirus industry, like Kaspersky, that has a product called Safe Kids. There's also Bark. It's another web content and app filtering program. But there's a host of them. You can actually look for consumer reviews online. I think reviews from other parents and their experience perhaps would be the best thing to equip yourself with when doing your research. And you'll learn about the trade-offs from one solution to another. Most cases, don't look for a perfect fit. Look for what best suits your family's particular circumstances within the limitations of each technology. And then certainly use any trial periods to ultimately make an informed decision. And finally, I just say, there's nothing wrong with good old boundaries, right? I believe the technology gives parents valuable tools to protect their kids online, but nothing works better than limiting the physical access to devices. So in our home, child devices are attached to a guest network. That network shuts off automatically at 10:30 each night, and the phones and the handheld personal gaming systems are downstairs on the kitchen countertop charging.
And that's a good idea to have that little hub. All right, so just a couple people mentioning Kaspersky, Norton. Tammy just made a comment that she's just still impressed that Edward can turn on his sprinklers from his iPhone. All right, so I'm not seeing any other questions right now. If you do have questions for Edward, go ahead and type them in. But Edward, just anything else that you think is valuable to share this morning? Any other resources or ideas or thoughts for our members?
So I think we'll have some links. My team will drop some links in there today
And they have,
with
yes, they did. I forgot to
with the
mention.
recommendations for secure email and maybe any other resource links that we can think of. But what I'd like to say is that we have to continue to raise awareness of the risks to digital security, even though it appears that at this point the message is continuing to be slowly absorbed. I'm always impressed that many of our members spend years attaining professional certifications, aligning themselves with the right local or national brands. They've successfully created a personal brand and augmented that with good client ratings and testimonials. And some of them have really exceptional social media presence.
Mm-hmm.
But many of those benefits, or the benefits of those efforts, can easily be undone if client data in your care is breached. That's going to hurt your reputation. It's going to hurt your business. There are real world costs and consequences for poor data security. So I'd finally just challenge anyone that's watching today to implement at least one best practice that we've covered in this broadcast. You can feel free to reach out to me at cyber@har.com for any of these questions or any questions that you'd like to have asked. You'd like to ask at a later point. And let's all do our part in the shared responsibility of good cybersecurity.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have a couple questions that did come in, if we could quickly address those.
Sure.
There was a question. You mentioned cloud storage for documents. So what is your recommendation there? Tracy's asking.
You know what? It just depends on what you want to do. Many of the cloud storage providers that are out there, there's some that are specifically geared towards consumers, some that are specifically geared towards businesses. So the question doesn't have quite enough details on it, but I'll do my best to answer it. I think if you're looking at something that's specifically for business, Box.com, I think Box.com, Box.net was really set up as a business-oriented file sharing system, and so you can grant access, withdraw access. You can actually set expiration dates, and you can do some logging. For business-related purposes, I prefer that. Dropbox started off more as a consumer-oriented product, and they've been trying to add on some more controls. But again, I am a believer that if there's something in your company's DNA or your product's DNA, that sets it apart from any other competitors. But those are just two of quite a few that are out there.
Okay, very good. We have your team, Brett and Nicholas, are actually sharing some links to help people out. So they were answering some of the questions about password savers. So thank you for that. There was one question Andrea asked, is there somewhere to go for best practices on HAR, and is there somewhere you're updating this information that they can go see online?
That is an excellent question. We don't have it yet. We will work on it.
All right, very good. That's fair enough. Well, a lot of our members are thanking you for this info, and then it's very helpful. Again, if you started midway through the broadcast, as soon as we finish here, you'll be able to rewatch from the beginning so you can get all of Edward's tips to keep yourself and your clients safe online. You can also email him cyber@har.com. Edward, thank you again for your time this morning. This was very helpful.
Thank you.
All right, well, we will see you next Monday at 9 a.m. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.